Okay, the next talk we've got now is Richard Tang from Zen Internet.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. The Roaring Twenties. So when you say that, it conjures up to me Art Deco and the Charleston. But I'm talking about the Roaring 2020s, which for me conjures up images of the decade of full fibre. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. But I'm going to start off at the beginning, because if you look at the internet technologies, they seem to fit quite nicely into the decade. So let's go back to when Zen started in 1995, the decade of dial-up, and this was our very original core network, 6 modems, a couple of LINX boxes, a router, IKEA wooden shelf, opened our doors and called ourselves an ISP. And in the 90s, the internet was very niche. So by the end of the decade, in 1999, only 13% of the UK households had access to the internet. There was no smartphones. Of course, that came in the next decade, so still a very niche thing. So move forward to the next decade, the decade of the 2000s. Some of you will recognize this consumer ADSL router. And ADSL launched in 2000, and by the end of the decade, was nearly 80% of all broadband connections, so 14.5 million ADSL connections. So that was the 2000s decade. Then we move on to the 2010s. So I would say that's the decade of FTTC. This graph shows the various technologies, the decline in ADSL. FTTC itself was launched in January 2010, and by the end of the decade, about 50% of all fixed broadband was FTTC, and that was grown, so 13.4 million connections. Cable grew slowly, so cable grew by 30% over the decade, but actually as a proportion of total connections in the UK that went from about 19 million to about 27 million, as a proportion it shrank by a couple of percent. And ultra-fast, so full fibre and a bit of G-fast in there, was just getting started. So that moves me on to the 2020s, the decade of full fibre, and a very interesting decade, I think. So first of all, the biggest player in the full fibre game is Openreach. Openreach have just got to about 6 million premises passed with full fibre now. The aspiration is to get to 25 million by 2026. So thank you, Clive, for that. How are they doing? Well, I thought it'd be worth just having a look at the build rate over the last year. So the build rate over the last year, 2.3 million. Are they building fast enough to get to that 25 million goal? So if you extrapolate that out, then you'll get to about 18 million by December 2026, which actually I think is pretty impressive when you consider what they're actually doing, but not quite fast enough to meet the target. So they're going to have to notch up. Actually not massively, but a little bit. In terms of take-up of FTTP, so again back to just sticking on Openreach for the time being, this is the take-up graph. So of those 6 million premises passed, 1.3 million circuits were live at the end of September, so take-up of 22%. And that represents about 5% of the UK's total of 27.5 million fixed broadband connections. So lots going on from Openreach. And if I'm talking about full fibre, I need to talk about the other established infrastructure player in the UK, Virgin Media O2. And so what are they doing on full fibre? Well, as of July, they had 1.2 million FTTP live. But one thing I think is particularly interesting with Virgin is the DOCSIS 3.1 upgrade, which is giving you a 1.1 gigabit download, a 52 megabit upload over the old cable TV networks. And that upgrade started about 2.5 years ago in Southampton and has been going through to the point where the end of next month, the entire Virgin network will be upgraded to DOCSIS 3.1. And that's 14.3 million premises. So if you add that to the 1.2 FTTP that are built already, that's a total of 15.5 million premises and growing that will have access to gigabit broadband. Okay, it's not gigabit upstream, but it's gigabit downstream. And that will make Virgin the UK's largest gigabit broadband footprint provider for probably about the next couple of years. Now, if Openreach achieve their goal to get to 25 million, then it will overtake Virgin in terms of gigabit connectivity sometime, I think, in about 2024. Now, Virgin is keen to get more out of its cable network. So there have been 3 trials already of 2.2 gig DOCSIS 3.1. The first trial had an upload of 214 megs. The second 2 were just a 50 meg upgrade as well. And actually, DOCSIS theoretically is capable of up to 10 gig download and 2 gig upstream. So actually, there's still lots of mileage left in the old cable TV network, but Virgin recognises that long-term Fibre's the way forwards. So they have set a target of 2028 to replace all the cable TV, all the DOCSIS stuff with FTTP. So that's where we are in terms of the 2 established infrastructure providers. And let's jump forward. So if the 2020s is the decade of full fibre, well, what's the 2030s going to be the decade of, or the 2040s or the 2050s? And of course, they're going to be the decade of a hell of a lot of things. You know, technology is going at a pace as fast or faster than ever. I did a talk here a couple of years ago on AI, and I think there's lots of things we can look forward to from that perspective. But in terms of infrastructure, I think that the 2020s will be the last major infrastructure rollout in all of our lifetimes. And the reason for that is really simple, of course, because once you've got the fibre in the ground, the upgrade path is effectively unlimited by just putting different kit on each end of the fibre. So from a gig to 10 gig, 100 gig, 400 gig, beyond, you can continue to make those upgrades. That means that if you want to be in the full fibre game, you better get in now. I think there's a window of opportunity of probably the next 5 years, that if you're going to build a full fibre network, you better get a lot of it built in round about the next 5 years. Otherwise, you're going to miss the boat. And of course, a lot of the altnets are very aware of this. And so what's happened is something that I'm calling the altnet gold rush, where companies across the UK are trying to build absolutely as much full fibre as they can with the promise of big rewards. Mark Jackson from ISP Review has painstakingly put together a compilation of all the different altnets. And I was quite surprised that there are about 100 on his list, from some quite tiny ones to actually some with pretty big ambitions. And it reminds me of the late 90s, the early 2000s, when the internet was new. And, you know, it was every other week there was another ISP popping up, and there were loads of them. And, you know, going back to my boat analogy, it reminds me of the BT Sailing Challenge, which happened in summer 2002, when, you know, BT corporate jollies were somewhat more grand than maybe they are today. And there was a whole flotilla of yachts with just loads of people from loads of different ISPs, and we spent 2 days sailing around the Solent, which was a lot of fun. But the thing that I remember is the number of different ISPs that were involved in this particular event, and it feels a bit like that with the altnets today. And in terms of the coverage of the altnets, so this is from a report done by Point Topic on behalf of the Independent Networks Cooperative Association. And it excludes Openreach and Virgin Media O2. So by the end of last year, there were estimated to be 2.6 million premises passed by those circa 100 altnets. And of those, about 800,000 customer connections. The survey asked the altnets, well, how much are you going to build by the end of this year? The survey was done in May. And they said, well, yeah, we think we'll we'll be passing 6.6 million premises, we'll have just over 1 million connections. And there's a bit of a health warning here because first of all, it's very aspirational. And secondly, it doesn't account for overbuild. And of course, with all these altnets, there's increasing pressure of overbuild from other altnets and from Openreach and Virgin. And they were also asked, well, where do you think you'll be at the end of 2025? And then the graph gets even bigger. So nearly 30 million premises passed. Obviously, a lot overbuild not taken into account, and there'll be lots of overbuild. Consider that there's only about 31 million premises in the whole of the UK, and 6.2 million customer connections. So very aspirational, but very exciting. It's a gold rush after all, and there's a huge amount of money being ploughed into this. So planned expenditure on CapEx between 2020 and the end of 2025, £10.8 billion according to this report. So lots of people are obviously seeing the opportunity that if they can get in, there is an opportunity to make a killing. Or not. I mean, who are the altnets? Well, I'm not going to go through the whole list of the 100. But these are the top 5 in terms of the current footprint. So actually, Fibre last week announced that they've just passed 1 million premises. Hyperoptic are their second with about 2/3 of a million. Community Fibre, just over 300,000. And then G Network and GigaClear, about 250,000 each. But I think it's quite interesting this in terms of what the different focuses of the different altnets here. So Fibre have a very much a nationwide strategy, but they're not doing very much in London, actually. Most of it is outside of London. Hyperoptic, focusing on big office blocks, apartments. Community Fibre and G Network are both London-based. Their focus is completely within London, and GigaClear completely focused on rural communities. So actually, they're all quite complementary with each other. In terms of future aspirations, Fibre want to get to 8 million, and if Greg Mesh has his way, he'll go higher than that. And Hyperoptic 5 million, Community Fibre 1 million by end of 2023, 1.4 million for G Network, and over 500,000 for GigaClear. And the aspirations from the others are, a lot of them have big aspirations. 1 million, 500,000, 4 million. One of them has an aspiration to get to 4 million. They've not actually built anything yet, but the aspiration's there, and the money's there, and actually a lot of the expertise is there too. And that moves me on to the great altnet gamble, because if you're building an altnet, you are taking quite a gamble. And I think that if you are building an altnet, I can see 3 strategies and 3 possible outcomes. The first one is get big. So this is definitely Fibre's approach. The next one is get bought. And if I think back to the 2000s, all these ISPs that were popping up, and then through the 2000s, a lot of them got gobbled up until we were at 2010, and certainly beyond that, there was a small fraction of ISPs, and in fact, far too few for BT to lay on any sort of jolly with them, because other than quite an intimate one. So there's definitely an opportunity for these altnets to get bought up, to consolidate, and then, of course, the investors, the founders, will do very well. Thank you very much. But the third option, or the third outcome, is to get stranded. And this, I think, will definitely happen to some of them. So they'll put a lot of funding into building a network. They won't necessarily have that many customers on that network, and then it gets overbuilt by, say, Openreach, or one of the other altnets, maybe Fibre. And then what value is there in that infrastructure when it's niche there, and probably not the value that has been paid for. So that is the gamble that the altnets are taking from what I can see. Then I'm going to move on to what I'm calling the scale problem. But before I touch on that, I just want to talk about actually the dilemma of business models. So there are 3 possible business models that an altnet can have. One is wholesale. So this is Fibre's view. We want to focus on our core business, which is building an infrastructure, and we want the ISPs to do the whole end user interaction. That's fine. Other option is retail only. So this is where you build a network and you don't wholesale it, you're going to sell directly to end users. And actually that works really well if you've got a captive market. So GigaClear did really well with this model by building into the rural communities, and they were the only choice in town. You know, if you wanted 50 meg symmetric, that was GigaClear, or you could stick with your half meg ADSL from OpenReach. But of course, as the overbuilds and upgrades come along, that is a business model that potentially could be strained. And then there's the option to do both, do wholesale and retail, and some of the altnets are doing that as well. And then you've got the challenge that, well, is that spreading myself too thinly for, in some cases, some altnets are quite small businesses. So it is a dilemma. It's not a dilemma for all of them. Some of them are very clear on the strategy. I know, talking to some of them, that it is a dilemma that they're juggling with. The other part of the dilemma, of course, between retail and wholesale, if they do retail, they get more margin. Yes, it's more effort. Wholesale, they get less margin. So I'm going to move back now to the scale problem and just give an example. And this sort of really happened, but I won't name who it was. So altnet comes along, knocks on our door in Rochdale. Hey, Zen, we're a great altnet. We've got 10,000 or 20,000 premises passed, but, we're going to build to X number, which is a lot bigger than that. So how about signing up as a wholesale customer and being a retail ISP? You've got a known brand. And the problem with this proposition is onboarding as an ISP, onboarding a new infrastructure provider is a lot of work. We've got to make commercial and service relationships. We've got to integrate with their API. We've got to build new products. We need processes for upgrades, regrades, cancellations, faults. So there's a lot of work there, and there's got to be sort of minimum opportunity to make all that work worthwhile. And with let's say 10 or 20,000 premises passed, what realistically could Zen win in terms of end user customers? 5% of that, maybe, we'd be doing pretty well. 10% max. So you're talking about maybe 500, 1,000, 2,000 customers. And is it worth all that onboarding effort, let's say, for another 1,000 customers? And the answer for us is it's just not worth our while commercially to do that. Now, I know I was speaking to a CEO of quite a well-known ISP fairly recently, and they had a different view. They were quite, much more ready to onboard with lots of little altnets to try and maximize the opportunity from an end customer point of view. So this is just Zen's view, really, not everybody's view. But I thought worth sharing. So that's a sort of whirlwind tour of altnets themselves. And then, so what's Zen going to do about it as an ISP? And in particular, what are we going to do from an infrastructure perspective? Well, first of all, we're not going to join the gold rush. We're not going to start laying our own fibre. We'll leave that gold rush to everybody else and focus on what we're good at, which is being an ISP. We have a project that we call internally the Journey to 700, which has nothing to do with my partner or this road in Chile, but is actually to do with building to 700 exchanges around the UK. We've got 451 live today providing on-net service. We've ordered the other 249, and as of a couple of days ago, we've got 81 racks delivered to date. Our goal is that by the end of this financial year, which is September for Zen, we'll have that project completed. What that will allow us to do is connect into at least 80% of OpenReach's FTTP footprint on our own network and 100% of locally connected on-net footprint for City Fibre, who is our other partner. So in terms of partnering with ISPs, these are the two infrastructure providers that we've chosen so far from the list of 100. At this point, I want to take a complete off tangent to something completely different, which is AI. And I was here actually 2.5 years ago at LINX114 talking about when AI becomes super intelligent. And one of the things that I showed back then was a survey of 352 AI researchers who were asked, when do you think certain milestones will be passed in terms of AI? And one of the things was, when will AI drive a truck? And the average view of quite a widespread, it has to be said, was by 2027. And I thought, okay, let's see if there's an update here. And the thing that piqued my interest was a news release about a month ago that Tesla were releasing in the US their full self-driving beta to drivers with a perfect safety score, 100 out of 100, over the last 100 miles. They want the beta testers to be the safest drivers. And I thought, is this a milestone towards that 2027 goal of having cars driving themselves? And this is what I found. Are we a step closer to self-driving cars? Well, the Society of Automotive Engineers have come up with a 6 categories of self-driving cars, 0 to 6. And the left 3, you are the driver all the time. The middle one, level 3, is a bit odd because it's sort of this hybrid that, well, actually the car's the driver a lot of the time, but if it gets into trouble, you've got to step in and take over the controls. And level 4 and level 5, this is the nirvana for self-driving cars, where the car is really driving itself. And in fact, at level 4 and level 5, you don't actually need a steering wheel or pedals, because the car will never ask you to take over at level 4 and level 5. So where's Tesla's self-driving beta? Oh, it's at level 2. So despite being called full self-driving, actually you are the driver all the time. So bit of a misnomer there. As I said, level 4 and level 5 is where it really is at with self-driving. And the difference here, so level 4, the car drives itself all the time, but in a limited set of circumstances. So the route might be limited. Maybe it can only do it in good weather. All the factors have to be right. And level 5 is the car can drive any route under any conditions. So the absolute nirvana. So in fact, the conclusion, I suppose, back to the question, are we a step closer to self-driving cars? Well, Tesla's calling it full self-driving is an absolute misnomer, because it is not full self-driving. It is a clever driving assist with you as being the driver. So a bit less exciting than it sounds like. Having said that, it's still really, really impressive what they've done. And I suppose you shouldn't take that away from them, despite the hype. My own opinion, I think level 5 by 2027, very optimistic. I think we've got a long way to go for that. But level 4 by 2027, so full self-driving in a limited set of routes, limited set of conditions, I think that is a possibility with the way the technology is going. Anyway, so I thought I'd just do that little AI interlude because it's something that interests me greatly. I want to finish off going back to Zen strategy, and this time not looking at infrastructure, but looking at our purpose. So the human race is on an unsustainable path. And it's not just the climate, which we're hearing a lot about now, but the well-being of society, and in particular, the obscene amount of inequality in the world. And this is one of the most potent examples for me of that inequality, that the 26 richest people in the world today own the same amount of wealth as half of the rest of the human race. There's a lot of focus at the moment with COP26 on governments fixing the climate problem, but actually, my opinion in it is, yes, they've got a big part to play, but I believe businesses, and the people in this room, have got at least as big a part to play in fixing the problem as the governments have got. And in fact, it's clear to me that governments alone, not only will not fix the problem, but even if they really, really wanted to, which actually, a lot of them do, they cannot fix the problem alone. Businesses have a key role to play. So with that in mind, I'm thinking, well, how can I get Zen to be part of the solution to these issues? And my goal for Zen is that we set an example of how to run a business, how a business can be run sustainably for the well-being of society and the long-term sustainability of the environment. And some of the things that we're doing, first of all, our most fundamental long-term objectives. So what's the purpose of Zen as an organization? And it's encapsulated in these 3 very simple priorities: happy staff, happy customers, happy suppliers. Creates an environment where people come first and money's second. Money's super important, but it's subservient to people. It's subservient to our environmental goals. We're a B Corp, so we're a part of a worldwide network of about over 3,000 organizations now that are all about using business as a force for good. And we've had to update our articles of association to give me and my fellow directors a legal responsibility to do good for the environment, to do good for society. We report on that annually. We're carbon neutral plus. We've committed to becoming net zero by 2028 and ideally sooner than that. And we continue to work with organizations in the local community. So this is what we're trying to do. And I want to finish off with, I suppose, a dream and ambition of mine for the future, which is just in my head at the moment, which I'm thinking, well, we're doing all this stuff at Zen, but what about taking that wider? What about other businesses? And I have an ambition and an intention to set up a charitable foundation, the Zen Foundation. And the idea of the Zen Foundation is to create an ecosystem within which businesses that are like-minded and have similar views can prosper, can grow in a sustainable way. So my sort of thinking is it'll be a bit like a private equity business, but that never exits any of its holdings. So that's the sort of dream, that's the ambition. It's just all PowerPoint and reports at the moment, but hopefully, if I come back to speak at LINX in a year or two's time, I can talk about something that's real and talk about some more details of how it's going. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much for listening. Any questions?
Thank you, Richard. Any questions? Yep. We have one from Tom. Hello, you got the microphone?
Yeah, Tom Rigg, Barn. Thank you, Richard. That was very deep. Really good to see what Zen's doing. It's amazing. A couple of things. When you're looking at the altnet business models, there is also community-owned. That's us. I know in the grand scheme of things, we're kind of looking in, but it's also a way of doing things. And we have, goals where actually we include a lot of the community in the, that's what we strive to achieve, rather than just being bought or being big. Actually, it's for the community. So I just wanted to point that out. And the other thing was, nice little anecdote about the automation and everything else. Veritasium on YouTube did a good thing on Waymo in the US about automated cars. So I don't know whether you've seen that, but yeah, it's an interesting topic and it's happening really fast. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention those couple of things. Thank you.
Yeah, a really good point about these smaller businesses that are community focused, because there are many examples of organizations businesses like yours that have that focus. And you know what? That's the sort of right focus that we need. Organizations that are doing the right thing, that they're not just in it to make a quick buck for 2 or 3 founders and then to hell with what happens next. But how many really big organizations are like that? Much fewer, I would say. And I think that's one of the things that we first of all got to question, well, why is that? And then secondly, well, how can we get bigger organizations to think more like the smaller ones? So a big challenge, but as I say, I think everyone needs to get engaged with it.
Okay, got a question again.
Yeah, Brandon Wadsworth, BBC. So it's a shame that all those altnets are going to blow this opportunity, as you say, in a reductionist capitalist model, where they've all got to get eaten or die. That's a real shame, because we don't really want to go back to the way that was just a very few big providers. If you want some diversity in this, and you want the long-term sustainability, like you're talking with the foundation, we need to find a way that these people can thrive together and concentrate on these things rather than just concentrate on consolidation and driving prices down to zero and profit to not much more.
Yeah, I think one of the issues is that that's the system that we have. You know, the majority of successful startups and growing businesses end up exiting, selling, and you know they end up being part of a big business with probably somewhat different priorities than they started off with. So I think the challenge for us is, okay, given that we know that that happens, well, how can we stop that happening? You know, how can we create, and I suppose my example, how can we create an ecosystem where that doesn't happen? Where actually, you know what, there is still an exit mechanism, if I can call it that, for founders that have worked very hard to build up a business. But it doesn't mean throwing away the values that they built the business up on. You know, the values are kept, but you know they're not expected to work till the end of their days. And something that I've given a lot of thought to. So I think that is the challenge. And I've not got all the answers, but I guess it's the challenge for everybody is how can we create that ecosystem where we can keep that diversity and we can keep, you know, the values that we want, but we can let that grow. We can let that grow to a point where it's making a significant difference rather than it just being a, you know, as you say, a very small number of very large businesses that actually, despite the best intentions of many people within those businesses, they're quite constrained on what they can do and what they can't do, I think.
Any more questions?
Got one at the back
over the far corner.
So with the fibre boom, if you like, to the premise, do you see a hiking convergence as well with voice, bearing in mind that PSTN and ISDN will be switched off in December 25?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, I'll talk about what we're doing at Zen. So we've built our own digital voice platform mainly out of open source stuff, and we're providing that now over the things like single order GEA to provide the voice service. So it's something that our hand has been forced to go that way, but it's also it's a great opportunity actually to get rid of the old WLR lines to provide a more integrated package for ISPs to make more margin, because you can make more margin if you do VoIP rather than do WLR. So yeah, I think all good. We'll all have to do it. And what I think we've still. It's easy for me to stand up here and say that I think the challenge that we get is in our monthly board report. I look at the number of WLR lines that we've got, and up until the last board report, it's still going up. So there's a point where that needs to hit the top and start going down, and it needs to reach zero well before 2025.
So just one other thing, will you work with the customers with that to provide ATAs for, say, like the elderly who are stuck with analog telephones and won't know otherwise to get a digital VoIP handset?
Yeah, absolutely, because I think that there's two things. That first of all, people want to keep their telephone number and telephone service, even though a lot of them don't use it as much these days. They still want to keep it. And the second thing is, if they've got their favourite hall phone or bedside phone or decked phone in the house, you don't want to be ripping all that out. So yeah, we need to provide a way for them to plug that stuff in that works, definitely.
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah, thank you. Any last questions? Okay. Yes, Richard, just one final thing you said about the self-driving cars. I've got a bit of a vested interest. I haven't been able to drive for medical reasons for 30 years. So I've still got a chance by the time I'm 60 of being able to go out on my own in a vehicle. So there's hope yet, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you.